Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mom's Corner. I hope everyone's doing well today. My name is Zainab, and I'll be your host today. I'm so excited to be here. I want to thank everyone for joining us. For those who are regulars on Mom's Corner, thank you for being here. And for those who are joining us for the first time, welcome and thank you. Before we proceed, I would like to remind everyone that, as promised, we will issue the stipends for those who are here today, and I will share the link in the chat box at the end of our session. So stay tuned for that. It is a participatory stipend, so we encourage everyone to participate in any way you are able to. You can open your camera, send questions or comments in the chat box, or use the emojis features. And please make sure to change your screen name to match the name we will be sending the stipend to, so we have the correct one. And if you would like help changing your name, please let me know and I will help you with that as well. A brief introduction of Mom's Corner. Mom's Corner is one of the many umbrellas under GPS, or Global Perinatal Services. And GPS is a nonprofit organization doing amazing work and changing lives every day. Our mission is to provide community-based doula services that will educate, respect, and empower low-income Black, refugee, and immigrant women and their families during pregnancy, birth, and into early parenting. And Mom's Corner is a space, is not just a space for moms, but for all women folk and for supporters of women, as I can see some guys here today, and I love that. And so at GPS, we believe that motherhood is an extension of a woman's identity and not the definition. And Mom's Corner, since the pandemic, has become not just a space where we come together to find empathy, support, and camaraderie, but a safe haven and access to so many critical resources in our communities. And today's topic is women empowerment through financial literacy education. And I'm so excited because it's a topic that our members have been asking for some time now. And so I had to learn more about personal finances and how to be financially literate in both the short and long term. And if we take away anything from today's session, I hope it's not just about saving money or accumulating money, but really how to have a better handle on your money. And that's, of course, the path to empowerment for women. And our amazing guest, Frances Suarez, is here to break it all down for us. And so I will hand it over to Frances to do the presentation. Thank you, Frances.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here and, show you guys basically financial literacy and how can it really empower you. Because I definitely say from my background, and I'll tell you guys a little bit about myself, how much it's really, empowered me, because I didn't come from, I basically came from a low income household with a single mom as a parent. And financial literacy, I did not really learn until just a couple of years ago. So I'm excited to bring this topic, and whatever questions you have, comments, you can say whatever you need. This is an open space. I'm here. If I don't know the answer to your question, I can definitely reach out to you at another time and let you know. So, but yeah, I'm very excited to be here. And I think this is an amazing cause, definitely very dear to my heart, since I grew up with a single mom, and, I definitely know kind of a different path not everybody goes through. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen so I can show you guys the presentation and go through that. Let me. Okay, can you guys see my screen? Good?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, great. So I put together today an agenda. Again, I want to keep it very high level because financial literacy, you can really deep dive into very specific topics, but I think we should just go into just the basics of it. So we're just going to tell you a little bit about Mission Wealth. That's the company that I work with, a little bit about myself, and then we'll talk about what is financial literacy, why is it important for women, the financial biases that women face today, creating a budget, which is basically kind of the basic first step into financial literacy, and understanding credit scores, which is a very long-term goal when it comes to finances, and then developing healthy financial habits and avoiding the pitfalls. And there's some resources, and again, very open questions throughout if you have any as we go through. So just a little bit about Mission Wealth and the company that I work for. We have been in the business for over 23 years. We're basically a registered investment advisor. And what that means is we offer holistic planning to high net worth clients. And holistic is not just talking about just investments, but we basically help these clients of ours with all aspects. So that just comes with investments, finances, tax planning, estate planning. So we really pretty much kind of give them this whole thing where they can come to us and we can help them out. It's actually 100% employee owned and operated. We have about 5.7 billion assets under management, and COVID was a really big thing. And even though that happened, we still have 28 offices located across the US, and we have tons of people working remotely. Me, myself, I actually am one of them. I have a team in Seattle and I have a team in Santa Barbara, and I live in Dallas. So, even though COVID hit all of us, we still have all this technology. So it's great to still be able to work and do that for different teams. And so then just a little bit about myself. Like I stated at the beginning, I came from a background where I didn't know much finance at all. And I actually, when I went to school and college, I studied public relations and communications. But once I left, I realized, I had credit card debt. I didn't realize, all these student loans that were creeping up. And it really made me curious about the topic of finance, because it is, a long-term thing, long-term goal. And so that's when I decided, I actually am more interested in learning about finance than I am in public relations in the marketing space. And so after I got my degree, I went ahead and started working for different financial firms. I started off doing operations, very, account openings, paperwork, and I've slowly kind of creeped up my way into this advisor position, which is now I actually interact with clients and we go through their, wealth management reviews and any year-end reporting. So I work with a group of advisors right now. And I'm originally from Miami. So I'm half Venezuelan, half Cuban, was born and raised there. And then I lived in Chicago for a couple of years, and then now in Texas for the last couple of years. So I've been all around. I speak Spanish. So if there's anybody here that also has any questions and things like that in Spanish, I can answer them in Spanish as well. So yeah, just like I said, I came from a background where I didn't really know finance, and it wasn't until maybe a couple of years ago that I really got into it and started to learn. And you can take a huge deep dive into finance because there's so many aspects to it. But this is just going to talk about how do we get there? How do we start it? And then from there, we can continue having conversations about the next steps. Is there any questions so far? Everybody still good? Yeah. Okay. So first thing we're going to talk about is financial literacy. What is financial literacy, right? So when you think about it, I think finances can put a stress. It's a word and a topic that people don't like to talk about, but it's something that you should be able to have open communication, whether that's with your partners or families or even with yourself. But financial literacy is basically the ability to understand and manage various financial aspects of your life, which include, one of them is budgeting, which I know it can be expansive, it can be hard, and it's something that I have struggled with, and I'm still learning how to budget myself. But saving, investing, and debt management, that comes with credit cards or student loans that you may have. And all these kind of skills that you learn, then they'll help you to that long-term financial being. So that's basically the main aspect of what financial literacy is. Then when it comes to women, it's something that you see on a day-to-day basis. You start to think there's always been, and we'll go through the financial biases that women face, but it's pretty shocking the status and statistics that you hear about what women face through when it comes to financial literacy. About 2/3 of working women are behind their retirement savings compared to only 30% of men. And also less than half of women are confident about their finances, and only 28% of those women feel empowered to take action. And I would have to say that I was one of those women up until, recently being in my position and learning about it. I was definitely one that didn't like to talk about finances. I didn't really even know what a budget was or credit card, scores and things like that. But once you start to learn it, you can really empower yourself, and it's just going to help you long term. And so basically women face obstacles when it comes to living expenses, building wealth, managing loans, and credit card debt. So it's important for us to understand financial literacy so that way we can be able to save enough for retirement, have the emergency fund, and not get into any excessive debt. And so us as women, I know there are some men on this call as well, but us as women, we face financial biases all the time on a day-to-day basis. One of the biggest ones is basically the pay gap. We all know, and it's been something that we've been struggling with for the last many years, and it's still happening today. We're slowly getting there. You're starting to see a lot of women in power. You're starting to see a lot of women take over jobs, be CEOs and presidents, but we're still not there yet. So right now with the pay gap, women earn an average of 82 cents on the dollar compared to their male counterparts, which this causes a big significant difference in their entire lifetime earnings. That's just one thing to think about. Maybe when you're getting a new job, you want to be able to make sure that you negotiate yourself well, you know what you're worth, and that's just something to take into account, that we're still getting there slowly but surely, but want to make sure that that's something that's known that we still face today. Another thing is access to credit and capital. And what that means is women are less favorable to getting lending terms or secure any sort of venture capital funding than men. Then the other thing is what we just recently spoke about is retirement savings. Because women are not getting paid as high as men, they're likely not going to be able to save as much as they want to in retirement. So that's just another biases that we face. Then the other one is investment opportunities. Women are less likely to invest. And it's most of the time it's because, we don't know that. We don't know the knowledge. We don't have the financial literacy. It's okay to ask questions. There are so many people out there that you can reach out to and say, I don't understand what investing means, and go through that entire aspect of it. I have to say, I had no idea what investing was. And now I do. It's my career. And it's something that takes time, but you just know that the resources are out there, and investing is a great opportunity once you are able to save and you're able to have your emergency fund. I think investing can be a great opportunity for you to take a look into. And then of course, as women, we have children, we have to take care of them, we have elderly family members, which that can also limit their potential of earning more money. We maybe have to work part-time because we have to stay at home with our kids or anything like that. So it's just, these are the financial biases that we still face today. But as I said, I know you see it in the news. There are women that are CEOs and presidents and just, becoming very empowered, and you can use that empowerment for yourself as well. And so, hopefully this statistic will change, but at the very bottom, we have a statistic that was a report by the Boston Consulting Group that women only control 32% of global wealth, while men control 68%. So that's just something to keep into account, and know that you can be out there and you can face all these things and you can still do it and empower yourself when it comes to financial literacy. So the first thing is creating a budget. That's the biggest thing when it comes to getting your finances and getting them intact. So what is basically creating a budget? What you want to know within a budget is you want to track, plan, and control the income that's coming in and the stuff that's basically going out. So any sort of outflow. And so you want to analyze all of that. Analyze your current situation. You want to determine what goals you have. There's people who are going to have different goals, short-term goals, long-term goals, and you also have financial goals, but also personal goals as well. So how does it work? you have to calculate your net cash flow, first thing, which means what money is coming in. And when you realize, okay, I have this amount of money that's coming in, what amount of money is leaving? So that comes with rent, utilities, things on a day-to-day basis that you have to pay for groceries. So when you look at those two things, you want to analyze, okay, is my income being able to pay for everything that's going out, and vice versa? Because if you have extra money, if you have a lot of money coming in and only a small amount going out in that outflow, then you're thinking, well, I have this extra $500,000, $10, whatever it may be, that I can save it. And so that's when you want to create a savings plan and also a spending plan. And this is when you start to realize and know where you stand, and you're going to look at your budget, and that budget is going to be your future, and then you set your goals. So you want to know what your goals are so that you can create this budget and be able to achieve them. Again, it could be something as little as a short-term goal of a gift. You want to buy yourself something that you've been looking at and it costs a lot, but you really want it. That's a short-term goal. You can put that within your budget and say, I'm going to save $10 for this goal because it's something that I really want. It's really meaningful to me. And you can add that as your budget. Or you have things that are a long-term goal, which could be paying off debt or buying a house. By purchasing a car. There's all these different goals that you may have, and they change on a regular basis. So you always want to make sure that you're keeping up with your budget. You're taking a look at it and reviewing it, whether that's monthly, annually, quarterly. And just one of the biggest things is to make it fun. And I have to say, when I first started budgeting, I didn't think it was fun at all. I was like, why am I doing this? I don't like looking at this. I don't like talking about my finances. But then I started to realize now I budget every single day. I'm looking at my budget. Okay, how much can I spend this month? How much am I willing to put towards a specific goal? And you can use different apps and resources, which I'll have at the end of the presentation, that actually helps you track it, and it makes it fun. It makes it easier for you to track it. It can help you categorize everything, and it'll just help you in the long run. And it really is one of those things where you look at, and if you achieve a specific goal, let's say, you want to buy earrings and they're worth a certain amount, and you start to budget every single month for that specific thing. The moment that you get to have the money to buy those earrings, it's going to be so meaningful to you, and you're going to reward yourself for that. And you're going to say, wow, I did all of this to get something that is going to make me happy. So that's why creating a budget is the main basic first step into getting your finances in order. Then the second thing that we'd like to talk about is credit scores. I'm gonna say, I did not know what a credit score was at all. In college, I took out a credit card. I started paying all my stuff on it. And I was like, what is this? I don't know. And then later started getting bills in the mail saying, hey, you have to pay for this minimum amount of payment. And I had no idea that it was even one, that I had to pay it so fast, or the fact that it was affecting my credit score. And credit score is really going to affect you when it comes to renting an apartment or a house, buying a car. So it's very important to make sure that your credit score is doing well. And so it helps you get more access to credit and things that you may want, which is a very long-term goal. So how the score is determined? You can use different softwares that track your score. So you have Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. They track your credit history, and then they assign a score, which is called the FICO. So when it comes to the scores, 700 or higher, you're eligible to get most favorable terms from lenders. So the house, the car, another credit card if you ever need it, a personal loan. And then 620 or lower, then you may want to start working on your credit. So what I would say is, now that we have the budget intact, you can add a goal and say, okay, I have $500 in credit and I want to lower that. You can add that as part of your budget. And then once you finish that goal, it's going to feel really good, because not only are you going to be done with paying off debt, but your score is going to go up. And now you can be able to go ahead and purchase anything that you need from that. Other ways that can negatively impact your credit, aside from just basically taking out credit cards, is late payments. And that's a really big one. It definitely hits you on your credit score. And not only that, you don't want to pay late fees because they can be really expensive. So you just want to make sure you take into account, there's an app at the very end of the presentation that works with tracking your bills. And so that'll help you say, okay, all these things are specific to they have a due date on the 15th, 16th, 17th. So you can keep that on track, and that way you don't have any late payments. Another thing that can impact your credit is not enough good credit, too many inquiries, which means you are trying so hard to get credit for a car or a credit card, and you're just applying. Every time you apply, depending on what you're applying for, it can hit your credit. So you want to make sure that you aren't just applying for 10 credit cards at the same time, because that can negatively impact it. And then the other thing that I want to talk about is student loans and how that can also impact your credit score. I also have student loans that I have been working on. You make sure, again, you don't want to ignore your payments. You want to make sure you do them on time. With student loans, you actually can communicate with the loaner and the lender. So you want to talk to them if you can't make the payments, because they'll be able to extend it or defer it. So there's different options for you when it comes to student loans. I know credit score, sometimes it can be a little bit complicated and understanding what it is. So if there's any other questions on that, just let me know. I don't see any questions yet, so just let me know if I need to stop or pause. I'll just go ahead and keep going.
I have a question, please.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Can you please repeat again how having more than maybe 5 credit cards could affect the credit score? Is it only when we don't pay it? Like someone told me the more you have credit cards, like from Macy's, JCPenney, and so on, that will affect the credit. So is that correct? Because one day I remember one of the insurance companies, they said that the credit score is low because of me having 7 credit cards. Is that correct?
Yes, it can also affect your credit score if you have too many things open, and if you have them at a certain amount. So if you have 1 credit card and what they want you to have, which will help out your credit score, is you can have 7 credit cards open, but as long as they're 30% or lower in terms of use, that is what will help out your credit score. So if you have 7 credit cards and they're all completely at 100%, then it does affect your credit score.
I didn't get the point of 30%.
So when let's say the credit that they give you is $500, right, on a credit card, and you use up the entire $500, you're technically 100% have used that credit card. So you cannot go buy something else because you've used the limit, which is 100%. Now, 30% would be only if you use $30. You only have quote unquote $30 in credit because that's the only $30 you've used. So it's in terms of usage. Your credit card is 100% of whatever amount they give you. And if all of your credit cards are maxed out, so if you have 7 credit cards and they're completely maxed out, none of them are less than that 30% that you want them to be, then that is basically what it can affect your credit score. So if I have 2 credit cards completely maxed out, they're technically at 100%, then it's going to affect my credit score. So you want them to be less than 30% of usage.
How about if you use only 3 of them and the rest you don't use them? So should I close them? Because I don't use them.
Yeah, if you don't use them, then you should close them.
Okay, thank you.
Some of those credit cards, also, if you're not using them, you may want to, look out for them too, because some of them do charge annual fees, and that's something to just keep in mind. And if you're if you're not using the card and you're getting charged for example, there's like a Chase credit card and their annual fee could be $500, and you're not using the card at all, but you're getting charged $500 every month for this fee, then it makes sense to go ahead and just completely close out the card and not have it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure.
But does it affect you if you close the cards? Does it affect your scores?
No.
Okay. What about store credit? Like, is that the same? Because I've closed a couple of credit cards.
Yeah, no, it works the same. Any store credit cards are the same as any other credit card.
Okay.
And some of those, another thing when it comes to credit scores that it's not on here, when you apply to credits, you know, depending on how your credit is, you do also could have the possibility of your interest rate being pretty high. And those store credits, like the stores at like Macy's and things like that, their interest rates, could be pretty high. I mean, I've seen their interest rates be at like 28%. So, you know, you may want to look out for those kind of store cards because their interest rate can be pretty high. There are different credit cards. There's a great website that it's actually not on here, but it's called bankrate.com. And you can go in there and you can compare different credit cards. There are credit cards that give you cash back when you use specific, for example, there's a client of mine who she does a lot of groceries and they give her about, I think it was 5% cash back every time she goes to the groceries. So that's something to take in mind. You may want to look at different credit cards that might work with something that you are already doing. So if you're spending, I don't know, however much in groceries and it's a certain amount cash back, you may want to look at that credit card, but you can go on the website and you can compare different ones. You can see what the interest rate is on them. And so, but that's a great website to use also for comparison.
For instance, for people who are just kind of like starting out and learning about credit scores and things like that, what kind of credit cards should they take out? If you can, I know you touched on that, but if you could just reiterate that.
Yeah, I would just think about depending on the person and their situation. I think, again, looking at bankrate.com could, you know, be a good resource, and you can be able to input your information on there and see what you're looking for, because it really depends. I can't really say specifically like this is a great credit card to go to or another one, because everybody's situation is different. But I would say just use the website. And I mean, if there's any other questions that come up, you know, I'm always here also as well. And then someone asked me directly, how can we use credit cards while avoiding using interest? So the way to do that is you buy something. Let's say today I buy something that's $100. I use my credit card. To avoid the interest, I pay that $100 before the due date and the interest won't hit. So you just want to make sure that you do that. So a good tip that I use for myself is I put everything on my credit card, right? Some things are, you know, really big purchases I put on my credit card. What I usually do is I put it on the credit card, but before I get hit with that interest rate, because it's going to do monthly, I get paid before then and I pay off my credit card before that interest hits me. So that's just a way of avoiding the interest. Because interest can be, if you're like again, the store credit cards, they have such a high interest. I mean, 24-28%, they're pretty high. So you want to make sure that you, when you buy something, which is another topic that I'm going to touch upon, is basically living within your means, you know, so you don't want to purchase just because you got a credit card of $10,000 of, you know, limit, doesn't mean you go out to the store and you buy everything that you see, because eventually you're going to have to pay for it. And if you're not living within your means and can't pay it off before the end of the month, so you got to avoid the interest, you're going to be paying a lot of interest. And at some point, you don't even know when you'll be able to pay it off, right? So you just want to make sure that you do that. And I have another question here. Will you be notified of the interest due date? So interest, it'll just comes onto your bill. It's not something that tells you that it needs to be due, for example. It's just going to add on to your card. So let's say you have a credit card of $500, your interest rate is 28%. That 28% is going to add on to the 500. So I'm saying if it's maxed out. So let's say you maxed out, it's 500. It's going to keep adding on to the 500. So it's not something that you technically will be notified. It just adds on to your credit card bill.
So this, Francis, is one of the ways to avoid that. And I know not everyone's going to be in that financial situation, but to set up automatic payments so that you don't run into this problem of like not remembering the deadline for the payment.
Yeah, so that's one of the things in developing a healthy financial habit, which is one of the topics I will also touch upon, is to go ahead and do automatic payments. That way it's not late, because then you can get the late fee. So if let's say you take out, something certain amount on your credit card, not only, and then you don't pay it on time, you'll get your late fee. And then on top of that, you'll get an interest fee. So you want to make sure that at least the automatic payments are set. That way it'll just be something you don't even have to worry about. You know that on the 15th of every month, it's going to take out $15, however much it is. So I'm big on doing automatic payments because sometimes many things can add up at the same time. So you can have credit cards, or you can have your car payment, insurance, things like that. So I personally have automatic payments because it frees my mind of having to worry, oh, I have to pay this on time. And you don't want to get that in late fee of, I've gotten late fees of $45 and you're just like, my gosh, wow. Right. So definitely want to do that for sure. Any other questions on the credit scores?
Does checking it make it go down? I'm not sure if that's.
No, so
your
you
credit
can
score.
use Credit Karma. You can also put that in the chat as well, because I know you're writing stuff on there, but Credit Karma, you can check on your credit score without it being affected. That's another, and Credit Karma has either the website or you can also have the app. So I have the Credit Karma app on my phone. So I can go in and check it and see what my credit is. And it's a great app. It also, determines how much you let them know how much you make. So it can tell you, okay, your credit score is this, is what we're getting from the information. And then this is your salary. These are some good credit cards that we think will help, you have a good chance of getting accepted. So that's another really, really great tool is Credit Karma. So then when we talk about credit scores, then this is putting it all together. Now this is, all right, we're going to develop these financial habits and we're going to stick to them. Again, it feels amazing when you pay off a credit card, or when you be able to pay for something that you've been saving up for so long. And that you start off with is creating the budget. Again, like I said, there's short-term goals, long-term goals. Your short-term can be to pay off some debt. Long-term can be, I want to be able to purchase this car or put a down payment for this car. So you can add those in. And that's why it's great you want to check on it regularly. You want to make sure, have any goals changed? Because every year changes. I mean, look at us, we had COVID happen, and that was a huge change for a lot of people. I know for me, I once COVID was, taken out and everybody can travel again, I know that I went and traveled all over. I went to visit friends, family, and these things started to add up. So you want to make sure that you have, that's why it's great to have the emergency savings, which is part of the budget. Whatever you have left over, if you want to save it towards your retirement, or you want to put it in an emergency fund, you definitely want to do that, because again, we never know what could happen. We had a pandemic, a lot of people lost their jobs and didn't have an emergency fund to be able to help them. So it's something that creating a budget is the main one all to starting and getting your finances pretty set. And so the next one again is setting your financial goals. Everyone has different goals. Everyone has different spending habits. Everyone has different spending stuff. Some people have to pay for a house or rent, or, some people have car payments, some don't. So you want to make sure that you put those in your budget. And again, you have short-term, you have long-term goals. It really all depends on you. And I know it's a topic that a lot of people don't want to talk about, finances or with their families or partners, but this is just a really great way to let not only yourself start to learn about, oh, okay, I need to do this, I need to do that, but also if you have kids, teaching them right now, teaching them young, there's really not many finance classes in terms of like learning about financial literacy in schools. So it's really good because I know I didn't learn any of this until after the fact, until I had debt and things that I had to pay, all of a sudden pay off that I had no idea what that meant. So it's really good for you to also talk about it with your families and say, hey, look, this is how you create a budget. This is what we're going to spend on. I know some people use like envelopes as a way to save and say, okay, for gas, we're going to put an envelope and it's going to be $20. So you're basically kind of creating a budget, but with envelopes, make it a little bit more fun, more interactive with your kids if they're younger. And then again, teenagers as well, they're going to start going to college, and it's also wanting to take a look like, hey, look, you got approved by a certain amount of student loans. You want to take a look and say, okay, let's really get down and look at what you got accepted. Some places will charge you a really high interest rate, some others don't. So, I encourage that if you have kids that are going to college, to take a look at the loans if they are applying for loans, and then also talk to their financial advisor. Right now, there are so many scholarships for kids that I don't think that we're aware of. I actually just got a scholarship. I'm actually getting my master. I completely forgot about this, but I'm getting my master's in wealth management at Columbia University. And one of the things is, like I said, I don't come from very wealthy family. I came from a single mom. So I need to find resources to help me get to basically where I'm at. And once I got accepted, one of the biggest things for me was, how am I going to pay for this? It's an Ivy League school. It's a master's program. I'm like, I don't know. But what I did was, which is I encourage you and encourage if you have kids to do that as well, just look up scholarships. There's tons of scholarships out there. Some just require essays, things like that. I recently just got a scholarship and it's going to help me pay for my entire summer semester. So there are out there, especially for diverse women, men that come from, low income homes and things like that. So I definitely recommend that as something that you not only talk to your kids about in terms of finances, but also when it comes to the topic of, okay, how are we going to pay for college? Because not only can you get loans, you can also apply for scholarship grants, fellowships, and things like that. So you want to do a lot of research for sure. And then the other thing that also is developing a healthy habit is save. Again, some of us, depends on your budget, might not be able to save at that moment. Maybe there's some debt that you have to pay off you cannot save $10, $5, whatever the case may be. But if you do, once you do create that budget and you analyze it, you say, okay, well, I have this month, $5 extra $100. What am I going to do with that? Instead of saying, oh, I'm just going to blow my money and shop and do whatever. Hey, you know what? I don't have an emergency fund, which really you should have an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months of rent, utilities, like the very important things. So if you don't have an emergency fund, definitely start saving it. Once you kind of completely have the 3 to 6 months of that emergency fund, then if you have extra money, start putting it in retirement and saying, okay, when I retire, I'm going to start slowly putting in there. But again, it all really depends on your budget. And that's why you should analyze everything. And when you look at these apps that I'll show you at the end, it's really great because you start to notice all the things that you pay for. And I'm going to say biggest thing is subscriptions. I have Netflix, Paramount, HBO. I have like all these random things. I remember one day I was looking at my budget and I'm like, I'm paying for Peacock or whatever, and I never see it. And I'm paying $7. It's very minimal, but think about it, 7 times 12. I'm spending that money on something that I don't even watch. So once you connect everything together, you connect all your subscriptions and payments and bills, you can really start to see, oh, wow, I'm spending, this amount of money and I'm not even using that thing. So those apps are really great because they definitely open your eyes. I know that I was spending all this money on subscriptions and I wasn't even watching half of these things. And now I took them all off and it helps me because now I'm like, oh wait, now I have an extra $10, $15. It's nothing, but for me, that's like, hey, I can go out and grab myself some lunch if I wanted to that day. Or if an emergency comes up, I need to pay for gas, something like that. Hey, I have that extra $15 now. And then the other thing with developing that healthy financial habit is live within your means. And I think this is kind of a big topic to talk about because of what recently happened with COVID. I think a lot of us at that time, once COVID was lifted and we can travel, we can do everything, everybody was in the mall. I know when you saw on the news, they were like, oh my God, inflation is so high and you know, all this stuff, but people were still spending. You go to the mall and it's completely packed. There was not one moment where you saw it was empty. Or to travel. I remember I had to travel for work and it took me hours to get in through TSA. Why? And it was in the middle of the week. It was like a random Wednesday because everybody was traveling. So it's one of those things there. Now that COVID has lifted, it's been almost like a year since kind of COVID has lifted. You want to scale it back. You want to say, okay, maybe I have been spending a lot of stuff on unnecessary items, things that I don't need. So you want to look again, it all comes back to the budget, analyze it and say, okay, I have $100 coming in, but I have $200 going out. That means you're technically negative. So what is it that you're spending on that you might be overspending? So you want to make sure that you live within your means and say, okay, I have this much coming in and I have this much going out. And then that's when you start to say, okay, well, then I have this amount for my goals that I need to set. So you just want to make sure that you keep that in mind, because I know that once COVID was lifted, it was just all hell break loose. Everybody was everywhere, traveling, spending on their credit cards. I know credit card spending has increased since COVID has lifted. So, you know, you don't want to make sure like at this moment and you say, okay, I can go and spend whatever amount on my credit card, but it's going to affect you short term because you're going to have to be paying off this credit card, long term because it's affecting your credit score. And you want to say, okay, if my long-term goal is to buy a car or buy a house, if you are spending all this money right now and thinking, oh, I can pay it later, but you have a goal of 5 years from now to purchase that house or that car, you might want to rethink what you're basically spending. So you want to make sure you live within your means. Any other questions before I move on? No? Okay. Then the other one to developing healthy financial habits, avoid debt. You know, if you can, do it. You want to make sure you take a look at these credit cards. Like I said, some of them can have really high interest. If you need to take out a loan, you want to make sure you compare it. You want to take a look at it. And if you do have debt, try to pay it off as soon as possible because you don't want this to creep up to you later. Like I said, you don't want that long-term goal of you getting a house extended another 10 years because right now you got a credit card, $10,000 limit, and you just went and spent it and did whatever you wanted, knowing you got to pay for it at some point, and it does affect you in either your short-term or your long-term goals. I think this one, when it comes to investing, I think that's way along the road. Once you get your finances, your budget, you have that set, you've set your emergency fund, you're good to go, you have no credit card debt. Also on that, then I think you can start saying, okay, I have my emergency fund set, I want to save $200 for retirement, and I have an extra $50 in the bank account. Okay, now I want to invest. Okay, you can start thinking about that. But I don't think that that's a goal to have at the beginning because you need to make sure all these other things are pretty set to be able to then start investing your money. Because you don't want to start investing your money, but then you're behind on your credit cards and you're behind on this and you can't pay for this and you're investing. I would recommend getting everything else set straight. And then you can start thinking about investing and, you know, whether that's short term, long term. Again, when it comes to talking about the budget, you just want to analyze it. You want to talk about what your short term goals are, what your long term goals are, and just really get that set for yourself. And everything else will fall into place. And again, it feels really, really good. The budgeting thing, I'm gonna admit, for me, I have credit cards, I have this, that, and talking about budgeting, I was looking at the numbers and I'm like, oh my God, no, I can't do this. But then these apps, there's so many resources out there that can help you. And then you make it interactive, you make it fun, because at the end I can say, wow, I saved another $100. Now I can go buy whatever I wanted to buy. Or my emergency savings. I know that that's something that I recently just did. I was able to finally have my emergency savings fund completely done and full. That made me feel really good, because if something dramatic were to happen, if I got, God forbid, get into a car accident or a health scare, I have this money set aside for that. So it makes me feel really good on a day-to-day basis. I'm not waking up thinking, oh my God, what if something happens today? I don't have the money for it. So having that emergency savings is really big. And then, like I said before, just review your budget. It changes all the time. There may be some situations where 1 month, you know, you got into a car accident and you had to take out some money for some situation. You're obviously going to analyze your budget, realize that, review it, and change it up for the upcoming months. You know, so there, you want to make sure that, you know, your budget is consistently being changed or reviewed if there were any changes. Then these are other things that you want to avoid. These are things that everybody does. It happens, but if you're, you know, literate in finance and you understand these things, now you know you can come out of this and say, okay, first thing I need to do, I need to create a budget. Okay, what comes after that? I've sat down, I've done all these things, but there's some common pitfalls that people go through when it comes to finance, their finances. So biggest one, living beyond your means. Only spend what you can afford. I think you know, it's been reiterated throughout the presentation, because I know it's something that's very big that has happened, especially because of COVID. It's inevitable that everybody, you know, wanted, finally you're getting out of the house, and then some people started to live beyond their means. Then the second one is failing to save for emergencies. Like I said, something can happen, whether that's you or your family or someone needs help. You want to be able to save at least 3 to 6 months worth of your expenses in an emergency fund. And how do you find that out? You look at your budget. Okay, how much do I spend on a month-to-month basis on the most necessary expenses? Rent, insurance, car, all those things. Then you say, okay, it's however much, $1,000 that I spend on expenses. I need to have at least 3 to 6 months worth. So that's $3,000 basically for 3 months. You have that set aside. Like I said, COVID happened, people lost their jobs, things happen in the world, things can happen to you. You can have a health scare where you can't go into your job. So what are you going to do? So you want to make sure you are saving for your emergencies. Another thing, which again comes, I think, after all of this comes set in stone, is not planning for retirement. And that's another pitfall, but everybody's different. You know, there might be a lot of other people struggling through their finances. So this shouldn't be a number one thing if there's other things trickling down that are more important. But once you get to that point, you want to start investing and starting your retirement plans and making sure, okay, I'm putting some money away for that too. Then the other thing is overspending on your credit cards. You want to use them responsibly, and you want to avoid carrying a balance to avoid interest charges and debt, which is what we spoke about. If you have your credit card maxed out or not maxed out, $100, $200, that interest just starts to trickle up, and then you're paying like way more than what you actually lent out, or used. Other thing is investing in scams. Just want to make sure if anybody comes up to you, tells you, hey, I have this great investment opportunity for you. It's amazing. It's going to give you 10% back in your money. You don't even have to do a thing. You want to make sure you research that. You can research yourself. You can ask for a financial advisor. There is so many resources out there. You can go on LinkedIn, try to find someone in your area. I know there's a lot of people that also do pro bono. There's different organizations as well that offer financial advisors to take a look at your stuff. So you want to make sure that you research that and don't put your money into something, because then you imagine yourself, you save this money, you said, okay, I'm going to start investing now. And then all of a sudden you give it to this person who's going to promise you all these things, and then they take your money away. So you want to make sure you research that. Not having adequate insurance, that just comes with everything, your home, your car, your health. If you have an employee that provides you health insurance, you want to take a look at that, because again, you never know what could happen. Ignoring your credit score is a big one. You don't want to, again, if you keep ignoring it and you're just using your cards, or you're just letting it run up, your long-term goal of buying that house or buying that car or whatever the situation may be can be really and hugely affected by your credit score. So you want to make sure that not only do you are aware of it, but you want to take steps to improve it if you have any debt. And I think one of the greatest things, when you were talking about, well, I have, 7 credit cards, and the insurance that I was talking to told me I have too many credit cards out there. If you download Credit Karma, it gives you a score on how, not just the score of your credit score, but it also tells you, it's like, and it's easy visualizing because it's like green, red, yellow, and you're like, okay, I'm in the green, I'm doing good. It'll tell you, okay, you have way too many credit cards, and it'll tell you how many you have, puts everything together because it gets all your information, it gets your social security and all that stuff. So it's able to pull up your information. So you can actually see, okay, yeah, you know what? All these credit cards that I have, my Chase credit card, my Macy's credit card, it says 100%, which means they're maxed out. And it's going to show me red because the Credit Karma is telling me you shouldn't have it at 100%. If you're using this card, try to keep it under that 30% of what the card is. So that's saying if the card's $100, let's say, is the credit limit, and you have it maxed out at the $100, it's going to be at that quote unquote 100%. But if you have it under $30, which is that 30% of what the amount of the credit card is, then you're in good shape. So Credit Karma is a great way. I know one of you guys were saying that you wanted to know like how many credit cards might be too much. If you download Credit Karma, you can take a look at that. And then a question here, what advice would you give to women who are not in control of their own finances and often advocate that responsibility to their partners? I know it's a very touchy subject, and sometimes we want to just have another person or the partner kind of do everything. But I think the advice that I would give is solely get yourself involved. That doesn't mean right away you're like, we need to create a budget, we need all these things, but you can slowly say, okay, I really want to talk to you about what are we spending. I'm bringing in this certain amount of salary, you're bringing in this certain amount of salary, and I want to get myself more involved. You don't have to do it all at once in the beginning, but I do think that it's something that should be talked about because, I went from a parent, I had 2 parents, and then my mom was a mom who had zero idea about her finances. She was a stay-at-home mom when she was with my dad. And basically, once they got divorced, it was like she had to start from the very scratch. And I think for us, it's you need to be able to talk to your partner and start getting a little bit of your handle on the finances. And if that doesn't work, or it's something that they don't want to talk about, then why don't you think about yourself and say, okay, I have this amount of money coming in, I'm spending this amount. And you want to make sure that you also can be able, because if let's say you and your partner were to ever split up, you don't want to be left in the dark, which basically had happened to my mom, where you're just like, I don't know, that's, I'm actually working with a client right now who recently just got divorced, and she doesn't know anything. She doesn't know credit card debt. She doesn't know budgeting. I'm literally helping her completely do an entire budget for her home. So it's little things like that, that even if it's not something that you want to do with your partner, or they just say, oh, I have a handle on it, I'm good, I don't need it, then just look at yourself and say, okay, I want to look at my finances. What am I spending on? Or what are we, doing that? But I would give the advice of get your hands wet in the finances, because you don't know what could happen if they pass away. You know, you don't want to be like my mom, 3 kids on her own, basically stranded. They took the house from us, you know, so we went from having everything to having absolutely nothing. And, you know, it's one of those things that I talk about it with my mom right now, and I'm like, how did you get through it? Because I didn't notice it until now. As an older person, she tells me all these stories, and I'm like, oh my God. And going through that and seeing what she's done, it's made me, one, more open to talk about my finances with my partner, because you never know what could happen, whether that's they pass away or we end things, or any, you know, any situation. Maybe they even have a health scare, and if that person is doing all the finances and they can't take a look at it anymore, what are you going to do? So you want to make sure you're getting your feet wet. And I have my own stuff, so I'm taking a look at my own things too, so that if anything were to happen, I know how to pick myself up. So I think that's one of the biggest things about being financially literate and learning these things. And they're just small little steps. Again, just like looking at your budget, what money is coming in, what money is coming out. You just want to take a look at that. And then I had a question here: shopping with a debit card versus a credit card. So the thing with shopping, whether with a debit card or with a credit card, is that with the credit card, you have more limit, or it depends if you have a limit on your debit card or the credit card. But let's say your credit card, you can use that. The only issue with the credit card is that you have to pay it back. So the thing is, well, what can I do to kind of, let's say you take out a credit card, you want to build your score. It does help you build up your score. So you take out a credit card, has a $100 limit, but you also have $100 on your debit card. What do you think you should do? Well, I want to build up my credit score. So I'm going to use my credit card, spend $100 on it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my debit card. I'm going to transfer the money right away, or right before the end of the month. So not only do you build up your credit that way, but you're also not getting interest because you're paying it off. So if your goal is to build credit, then use the credit card, but try to avoid the interest charge before the end of the month and pay off with the debit card. So it really depends on what your goals are. If you don't have any credit cards at all, then you know your debit card is the way to go. But if you have a credit card, you want to build up your score, maybe your score is really low, the way to build it up is to use credit, but to also pay it off on time. So that's just basically the differences between shopping with either or. Does anybody have any other questions? And then, so aside from all the other resources that we went through, bankrate.com, it's a great website to go through credit cards, seeing that what works for you. Credit Karma is another great app that you can also use as well to look at your credit score, see what, you know, depending on what your credit score is. Credit Karma can also help you and say, you know, this credit card is, you know, high percentage of approval. You can see also, okay, I have too many credit cards. What can I do to minimize it? Credit Karma has all these other resources as well to go through your credit with you. They do a great job and say, what would my credit score look like if I paid off $1,000 of it? And then you can actually stimulate, it's what's called, you stimulate the credit score, and it shows you what it thinks that you would happen. And you could see, like, it goes, let's say your credit score is 650 and you pay off all your credit cards, it can stimulate and let you know what that looks like. So it can go all the way up to 750, depending on your situation and what credit cards you have. Credit Karma can go through that. And then when we're talking about budgeting, this is where Mint comes into play. So Mint, I don't know if you guys have ever used like TurboTaxes. All of that comes from the same company, which is Intuit. And they have this other thing called Mint, which is a website or an app. So you can use either or. And what this does is you connect your cards and all of your finances into this one place, the app, and then you can categorize your budget. So for example, I have it connected to my debit card. And so my debit card incomes every month, my salary, right? So I have money coming in, but there's also things coming out of that card, which is Netflix, paying my rent, paying my car. So what Mint does is it tells you, okay, for the month of May, and you can do it every single day and categorize it every day. For the month of May, you're looking at, you spent this much on Netflix, this much on the car, this month on rent. And then what you do is you can categorize your budget and say, okay, I'm going to name this category home. And in that home, you can put, it's basically kind of just like a little, it's almost like a little game, but it's not a game. I mean, it's your budget, but it makes it fun and it makes it interesting. And so you can move it and say, okay, my rent, my utilities, the trash, whatever it may be, it's going to go into the category of home. And then you can look at that every single time and say, okay, for home, the maximum in my budget is $2,000. And there might be situations or times where it's a little bit more, but you can always look at that and say, okay, I've spent less on gas this month. I've spent more on this. I have a little bit of wiggle room. So it's easy for you to kind of keep up with your budget. And again, it's a very easy way to see what you're spending on, because sometimes we're just not even looking at our cards every day. We're not looking what's taken out, what's coming in. We're just spending whatever we have. And then the next one is Prism, which is great because it organizes all of your bills. So if you have 7 credit cards open, you can put them all into the Prism app and it'll tell you, okay, this is what your account balances look like. And these are the due dates. So one of the biggest things was automatic payments. Just have that set. It's going to be easier. It's going to be free of mind. You don't have to be worrying about it. And again, it's another app that you can use. And then another question here, what about folks who are not technology literate? Are there ways they can still budget outside of online apps? Yes, you can do it handwritten, which a lot of people do. My mom has done it before. And basically it's just, I'll send to you at the end of the presentation, kind of like an Excel template of what that might look like. And you can print it out or you can just handwrite it and be like, okay, you know what? I spent $1,000 on rent and this stuff like that. And you have different categories for yourself. So if you're not using your technology or up to date on everything, even if you get your like credit card or things in the mail, like your payments or statements, just put those aside. And then once you have everything for the month, you want to take a look at it and say, okay, I have the statement of April right here in my hand. I'm going to put that in my budget, and you just do everything manually. But there are like templates and things online that I can go and look at and send over to you to send to everybody else. But you can also do it by hand, and then you'll just use a calculator, and that's the way you can go ahead and do your budget manually. And then that's pretty much it for the presentation. I know we have pretty much a good amount of time left and for it, so I don't know if there's anything else that people want to talk about, if there's certain situations. I mean, I can also send you my information personally, so if anybody wants to reach out to me and ask me any personal questions that they may not want to talk about in front of everybody, you definitely can reach out to me as well on that. But I don't know if there's any other things on the presentation that people want to touch upon.
Such a great presentation, Frances. Thank you so much. I learned so much today. There's been so many great questions from our audience as well. I just wanted to add to that, like what the pandemic has taught us and just how the importance of financial literacy and starting from a young age, like you said, seeing your mom really having to struggle. And so I'm wondering, like, if you have any more advice for us, because most of us, we don't grow up in households that money's talked about. It's like you and I talked about it, seen as like something icky, and like that the psychology behind it is that something that only men are responsible for in many households, and so women don't really get involved in that way. Not that they're not equal in their acumen of money, but just really starting at a young age for kids, the instant, gratification, the time that we live in, order something online, shows up outside your door. So they don't really know like everything that happens in between and the process that it takes to get to that point. But
Yeah,
delayed gratification aspect of it, if you can speak, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's, it's something that I've learned to not do. And like you said, you get that package right away, right? Amazon is, you can literally get it within 24 hours. And so it's one of those things where I think if you talk to your kids young, even to yourself, when you're creating this budget, you start to see all the things that you're spending on, and you start to realize, wow, I'm spending $100 every month on Amazon because I'm just buying random stuff. And I think it's great because it shows up to my house, 5 minutes later. But I think if you have that visualization, which is why having that budget in front of you is going to really put in your mind, okay, well, I'm spending this much on that, even though it gives me a little bit of that instant gratification. Is it something that I really need? Because now I'm looking at my budget and I'm spending $50 on Amazon every month because I'm buying all this stuff. But is it really helping me out in terms of, I'm looking at my emergency fund and it's at zero. And I think visualizing that and seeing that is what really going to help people kind of understand that that instant gratification is not something that is really worth it when you're looking at the big picture. And I think it takes us a while to understand that and look at the whole picture, the big picture of your finances. And I think if you start teaching them young, you start having these conversations, even if it's something as little as, okay, you did a house chore. I know some people work differently with their kids, but hey, you did a house chore, we're going to give you $10 for cleaning your room. And then that child has a $10 and they're like, oh my God, I'm going to go and spend it on everything. But if you show them and say, okay, use the $10, but you're going to use it on this, are you going to be happy if you have this for only, you get it, you play with it for the first day, you don't play with it again. You just lost those $10. So it's one of those things where you want to talk to them young, kind of let them see, visualize that sometimes some of these things that you think are going to be really good for you, get that instant gratification, it's something that's not going to be useful for you in the long term. And when it comes to, talking about it with the partner, it's kind of hard because everybody has different situations. So it's really hard to, give the advice on what to do or say, because some men want to handle it completely because their whole lives they've been, maybe they grew up with that father figure, that dad or whatever, took care of all their finances, and they don't think that or need that the woman in their life needs to understand that because they got everything handled. So it really depends on the person that you're with, the partner, but you want to be able to slowly communicate and be able to talk to them in a way where you're just saying, it's more so I want to help you, I want to help me, I want to help a family. If I'm more involved, I can be able to see things that maybe you don't see, which can help us both out. So I think could be a very touchy subject, and I think it needs to come in with kind of like, a slow type of conversation, whether that means, hey, I just want to talk about our finances, I want to create a budget, or even say, you know what, we have this long-term goal of buying a house together. Can we sit down and talk about it? And some people don't like to do that, but I think if you come in with, caring and compassion that I know that we all have, I'm sure that the other person, the partner, will want to talk about it too, especially if it's going to help the both of you. I mean, why wouldn't you want to have an extra person take a look at the finances that the house is bringing in? It's nice to know that you have a partner there, someone else to take a look at. And, another reason to have your partner and let them know is say, hey, what if you're gone tomorrow? I don't know anything. That makes me feel like I'm not useful as part of the family. So I want to be able to understand the money and the situation that we're going through, so that if, God forbid, anything bad were to happen to you, I can help our kids and our family and make sure that everything stays completely stable and that we're not struggling here trying to get things done because we don't know what happened. So I think that's really just depends on the person and who their partners are. But I think coming up with these kind of ideas, letting them know that you come from a caring aspect, not only for yourself, but for your family and things like that, because some situations can happen. Maybe both of the parents need to go to work, one person needs to go to work, whatever the situation may be, but you want to come in with open arms and say, I just want to help you, me, and our family together and talk about the finances, even if it's a touchy subject. And I do think it starts off with something as little as just creating a budget.
Yeah, just wondering, Francis, like having two savings account versus just having one big savings account for both people. Like, can you talk to that?
Yeah, so again, it really depends on the partnership and how that works. I know there's a lot of people that want to put everything together, but I think if you do everything together, there needs to be some sort of an agreement and communication between one person and the other, because yeah, it may be great to put your savings together, but one person may be spending on themselves or on unnecessary items, not for the house, not for anything. So I think if you were to put your savings together, then you want to make sure you have that communication open with your partner. For me, I would suggest having it separately, because there are some things that you are going to feel more passionate about than your partner is. So for example, I'm into jewelry and hair products and things like that, and I have my own account so that I know what I'm spending and what I'm saving up for. And another situation is you can have separate savings account and then have one savings account as well, and say, okay, I'm bringing in this money, it's in my savings, you're bringing in this money, it's in your savings, but every month you're putting in $100 into our joint savings and I'm putting $100 into our joint savings, because let's say a goal is to travel, they want to go and see their family in Venezuela, for example. Then that's something that you both can be like, okay, well, we have one account where we both are putting in the same amount, or one can put, again, communication really comes down to it. One can put more than the other, but we're using that joint savings account for something specific. But yet we still have our separate accounts. Again, for kids, I think them having their own savings account is something that's really great, because when they have that at such a young age, then they're able to understand their finances quickly. They can see quickly how much the money goes and how little comes in. So when they see that visualization themselves, then that's really great to have. And it's also great to have savings account for when it comes to college. So even if that's putting $5, $10 a month into a 529 plan. So a 529 plan is a college savings plan for kids. So let's say colleges right now, I think, are ranging 30. If you're going to a public college or university, it's about 30 to 40K a year, and it's 4 years. So if you think about that and you're like, okay, well, there's scholarships out there, there's grants out there, but we have an extra $10 that I can put into a 529 plan. Let's start doing it. They're only 2 years old. Imagine that, how much money that's going to increase by the time that they're 18 and they can take out the money. Then you're like, okay, they have an extra $10,000. That's a big difference, because that's going to cost books or dorm or food for college. That the rest, if they have to pay for it, then it can come out from loans or from scholarships, grants, whatever the case may be. But that certain amount is going to help them. And so the other thing with 529 plans is they're actually investments. So that money grows with the kids. So for example, your kid is 1 year old right now. You start putting $10 in the 529 plan, $100, whatever it is, every month. That money is going to increase because it's going to be in an investment. So depending on how old the child is, the investment will either be very conservative or very aggressive. So the difference between that is conservative means that the child is about to go to college like tomorrow, right? So you want to make sure the investments are not too risky that it's going to cause for it to drop dramatically. But then you have aggressive is, let's say the child is 1 or 2 years old, then you can put them in an aggressive 529 plan fund, because you know that it's going to grow immensely, or if it goes down, it'll be okay. But they have 18 years before they go to college. So you have those 18 years that you can aggressively invest. And some of these 529 plans will adjust as the kids age. So it'll say, okay, it can be really aggressive now in elementary school. In middle school, we'll kind of put it moderately. When they're in college, we're going to kind of bring it down their investments conservatively because they're about to graduate and they're about to go to college. So you can also have that separate savings account in terms of, you know, if they do chores and things like that, you want to throw in money there and they can use that savings account for themselves. Or if you want to save for a 5 to 9 plan for college, that can be another option for them. And trust me, they'll thank you later. I did not have a 5 to 9 plan or any sort of savings account when I went to college. And so it's really great to see that you can be able to help them out, even if it's just as little as $5,000 or something that you had in there just for them, because books right now, even just books, are costing like $5,000. So anything helps, I think, when it comes to that.
Yeah, and not to mention, like most kids, immigrant or refugee kids who are born here won't qualify for financial aid sometimes, depending, of course, the FAFSA, and you fill it out, depends on your parents' income. But it's just, that's the importance of having a safety net savings.
Yeah, and the other great thing about the 5 to 9 plan is, so when you take out money from a 5 to 9 plan, it needs to go towards a qualified expense, which that means it has to be a school expense. So whether that's their books or paying for tuition, that needs to go towards that. Let's say, because you don't know, let's say you have a child and you start saving up 5 to 9 plan for them, and then they turn 18 and they say, I don't want to go to college. So you're like, well, I just have this 5 to 9 plan. There's multiple options after that. One, they can still take out the money, but they are going to get a 10% penalty off of that money that they take out because it's not going to be used for qualified expenses. Or if you have another child that is planning on going to college, you can actually change the beneficiary over to the other child and they can use that plan and whatever is in the savings account in that 5 to 9 plan. So there's other options. And then now they just passed where after a certain amount of time, that 5 to 9 plan can turn into a Roth IRA up to $35,000. And so a Roth IRA is money that grows after tax, which is great because when you pull from a Roth, you don't have to take any taxes. It's already been taken out. So that can happen if, again, a child doesn't go to college. You can wait 10 years and they can turn that money into a Roth IRA, which they can take out. It doesn't need to be a qualified expense. It's just a regular retirement account for the child.
But it's transferable to like siblings. Does it just stay transferable to siblings, or can you transfer it to other members of the family?
For the Roth IRA, I would have to double check once it reaches that point to see, but that Roth IRA can stay with that child. So if they wait a certain amount of years, I have to double check how many years, they just passed it. Then they can use that as their retirement account, and it could be any age and the person that is the beneficiary. If it's after the fact, I would have to double check if the beneficiary can change before then.
Okay, but this
As for a 5 to 9 plan, it could change. So let's say my mom, I'll give you an example. Let's say my mom started a 5 to 9 plan for me. When I turned 18, I said, I don't want to go to college, but my little brother, who's 5 years younger than me, does want to go to college. She can change the name of the 5 to 9 plan, the beneficiary, over to my little brother. So basically it won't be under my name anymore. I will not be able to take money out of it or use it, but my little brother can, because now it's going to be, he's the beneficiary. So once you go to college, that extra, let's say I had $5,000 in it, it'll go to him. And he can use it towards his school and qualified expenses. Now, let's say that I didn't go to college, but my mom transferred over to my little brother because she thinks he's going to go to college, and then yet he doesn't go to college. That Roth IRA is going to be under his name after the certain amount of years. It won't be under mine. So once you transfer it over, you can't transfer it back, basically.
Yeah, okay. And then the stipulation is that it's used for college, then like you can't use it. You said there was a penalty if you don't use it for college, or
yeah, so it's like I just want to buy a car, for example. I didn't go to college, just want to buy a car. Or even if you are in college, but you have other things that you need to pay for, you know, let's say a new school outfit or something like that that doesn't qualify for the expense, then you'll get 10% penalty off of that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Someone was asking for the slides. Would it be okay, Francis, if I shared with the group afterwards in an
Oh,
email?
yeah, for sure.
And I can also, your contact information with them as well.
Yeah, and if anybody has any other questions that maybe you didn't think about today, but let's say tomorrow you're starting your budget and you have a question that comes up, you can email me, or, call me or anything like that. I know you'll send my information over, so you guys can ask me any questions of anything. If you forget, or, something maybe you don't want to talk about it in front of everybody at this moment, you can always reach out to me and I can help you with that.
Sure. Someone sent me a private message, Francis. They're asking a question. Is it okay taking loan from your 401k? I missed it here. From taking a loan. Taking a loan from your 401k to pay for credit card debt.
So what I recommend is not to take out from your 401k or your retirements, because you are going to get penalties off of that after a certain age. So basically, if let's say you're under 59 and a half, you're going to get penalized for taking out of a retirement account. It's 10% penalty. So that's just a thing to kind of think about. I know there are ways to take out 401k loans when it comes to being a first-time home buyer. But again, I would just review the 401k loan terms. I would look at their proposal, their documents, and really read about that, because you don't want to put yourself in a situation where, you get 10% penalty, or there's a certain amount of time that you have to pay off that 401k loan. If that's, the last option, I would definitely, I just think that you would need to research it and really review the terms and conditions. I would say call your 401k provider and say, okay, I'm thinking about doing this. I want to take out a loan for however much. What does that look like? What does that entail? And things like that, because each different 401k provider is going to have different terms and loan situations and options for you. So I would just say that you would need to talk to your 401k provider before doing anything. Are you a financial advisor? So I am right now working for financial advisors. I'm not a financial advisor yet. I will be by December, but I'm in the process of doing that. So the way that my company works is you come in as an advisor associate. So I'm a senior wealth advisor associate, and I work for 6 advisors, and I work with clients on a day-to-day basis as well. But I'm not taking on clients for myself just yet. So
From your presentation, I couldn't tell the difference. So thank you for clarifying that, but very, very insightful information. If anyone else has any more questions, please go ahead and ask. I wanted to touch on, Francis, you mentioned like giving back to communities of color and just kind of informing them of the importance of financial literacy. If you can talk about that a little bit, the work that you're doing on that front.
Yeah, I'm really big on that. I've told you guys my personal story and my background. And I think it's very important to me, because I grew up in a household where money wasn't talked about. And I think now I realize it, I look at it, and I know now that when I have kids, I want them to teach these things at a very young age. But I know that, if you have friends or people in certain situations, you want to help them out, you can give them these resources, give them this presentation. If they have questions, there's always all these resources out there. You want to look for different organizations and nonprofits as well. Like I said, there's a lot of financial advisors that do pro bono. And so you can use that, but definitely it's something that once you yourself, if you feel, financially literate and you feel like you can help out others in your community, I definitely suggest to do so. Sometimes people have a hard time thinking, oh, but I grew up in this low income housing. I, don't want to ask a stupid question. Honestly, there's no stupid questions. I was there. I was in that situation. you sit here and talk to me, you'll be like, oh, but you're a financial advisor and all this information. And how do you know all of this? It's, you just learn, you research, give yourself that knowledge, ask questions. I ask 1,000 questions a day to all my advisors, clients, and things like that. So it's just something that you want to make sure that once you have that, you also want to give back. And I think one of the biggest ways giving back is doing it with your own kids, you know, because they're going to learn and they're going to be able to be, you know, financially literate for the rest of their lives. Developing these healthy habits, you start doing that right now, and then it's just going to continue over time. So being able to build up that generational wealth, you know, yourself showing your kids and then your grandkids, and you will consistently keep having that financial literacy, that really, it makes a big impact. And I think if you have that and can give that also back to, you know, your communities as well, you know, it's one of the things that I know that I want to consistently do is always keep giving back to the community, especially for those that don't speak the language. You know, it's very hard. I grew up in Miami where everybody pretty much spoke Spanish, and it felt like I wasn't part of the United States. You know, you're walking around, everybody's just speaking Spanish. And so I think I want to be able to go back now to my community and my home and teach these people these things and teach them in Spanish, because there's probably not someone out there that's doing that for them. And so I think it's a really, it makes a big impact on our financial world completely, and then on your own self as well, and those coming after you.
Absolutely. And financial literacy, it's not just about finances, but like it creates, if you don't have knowledge of money, it creates anxiety. And that can have a ripple effect, not just in your finances, but your health, your mental health, and every aspect of your being. So it's very important to start early.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest things that we do at Mission Wealth is, yeah, we could sit here and talk to you about your finances and your tax planning and estate planning and all these things. But one of our biggest things that we also have that's part of our planning, it's called Inspired Living, which is looking at your personal life, what's going on. Do you need, you know, we have sometimes sessions where people come and talk about mental health and things like that, which are very important. So it's not just, okay, we need to sit here and talk about money and it gives us a headache, but also the fact that, okay, there's other aspects in our life that we want to talk about that are important to us, you know, personal things that are important to us. So you want to make sure that you also talk about those things, because it's not just about finances. It might be a headache, you know, some people don't want to talk about it and things like that, but there's other things that you want to also account for when it comes to that. You know, there's these life goals that you have, and they are going to coincide with your financial goals as well.
That's right. And like I mentioned before, for like having knowledge of money and being financial literate, it's like hygiene. Like, you know, if you use the bathroom and you don't wash your hands, like you're not only gonna make yourself sick, but you're gonna make everyone else sick as well. So just having that basic knowledge is very important. You know, where money is going and coming in from.
Yeah,
and I think, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's just crazy to see, you know, when you really start to create that budget, whether that's written or using an app, you really start to notice what money is going out and the money that's coming in. And then you can start to say, well, I have this goal of doing so and so, and I have not even touched it, and I wonder why. And so really looking at and having that visual is really going to really make an impact on yourself as well. Like I said, when you start to save up, or you see that number go up, or whatever your goal is, and when it comes to the finances, it's going to affect your personal goals, and then it'll affect you on a day-to-day basis. You don't have to be worrying about credit card debt. You don't have to be thinking about those things that can really bring you down, you know, and looking at that monthly statement could have an effect to you. Like you said, mentally, health, you know, you can cause a lot of stress to yourself, where you're, you know, stressed out, you can't sleep, and then you're not eating and things like that. So you want to make sure that these small little things, the small basic steps, can get you to where you want to be, and it'll make an impact on you, on your family, and anybody else that you want to also kind of talk to about these things as well, whether that's your partner or your family or your kids.
That's right. And you mentioned like cutting out unnecessary like things, living within your means, and you used example of like subscriptions or like hair products or whatever, but I think it also goes like food, like spending on food, or talking to your cable company, like seeing maybe a better package that's, you know, that you can pay for and you still get the same thing. But sometimes it's like, you know, you're paying hundreds of dollars, and like you said, you have Netflix as well, you have Comcast, or you have other, it's like, and most of us don't even watch a lot of TV. So it's just really looking at the big picture and being like, okay, this is what's going on and I'm not even using it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of companies that are wanting to help you, you know, and I think, again, we get afraid to ask, or we get afraid to feel like, you know, we feel stupid or something in your feelings. Because I've been there before where sometimes I'm like, I don't want to call Comcast and see if I can get a better deal, you know, or tell them about my financial situation. I don't know if I can be able to pay for this, you know, just like I stated with the student loans, you can call them, you can contact them and say, you know what, this is my financial situation now, especially if something big happened, if you had a health scare or something like that where your finances go somewhere else, you can call these people. You will be able, and if you get someone who is just an absolute no, they're, you know, hang up and call back again, you'll get someone on the phone that is willing to help you, willing to look at your information, talk to you, and see if there's anything better that's out there for you. I know that that's a huge thing. I know that that's something that my mom went through. And so I really think you need to let go of the fear that someone is going to say no to you. The worst thing someone can say is no, right? So what do you have to lose by calling and asking, can you give me a lower deal on this TV, whatever I'm looking at? And I promise you, there's going to be people out there that are going to be willing to help. There's huge companies that also deal with organizations and low-income housing and nonprofits that understand the situation that people are going through. So I think if you have any certain situation or something that you might be going through and it's causing you a lot of mental health and stress and things like that, call up the situation or whatever you're using and say, hey, this is what's going on. Can you help me in any way? Worse is going to say no. You continue paying what you have to pay. You know what you have to do, but you can ask for help. I don't know if anybody else has any other questions. I know that we'll send the slides over to you guys so you guys can look at that, and then also my information so you guys can reach out to me if you have any other questions. And you know, I think we can work on maybe if there's a big topic that people are thinking about, you want to go more into, you know, 5 to 9 plans and college plans for your kids, or how to talk to your kids about financial literacy, or kind of where to start with them. You know, we can obviously talk about and see what other sessions that you guys may want to have that we can do as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Francis. Such a phenomenal session. I think that's the most participants as well. So this is clearly a topic that everyone really wanted to hear about, and you did a phenomenal job. Thank you so much. And thank you guys for coming and your questions. And I will be sure to share the slides with everyone and Francis's information. And Francis, I'll be in touch about, I think we talked about like having a workshop or something, or pre-recording it for the youngsters in financial saving literacy. Yeah, so I'll be in touch with that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. And again, I hope this was useful to everybody. You know, I know it's a lot of information all at once, and there may be questions that come up later, but you know, I hope that learning about the credit scores and understanding that a little bit, using the resources as well, you know, hopefully that'll really help you. And just very basic, start with your budget. Start there. That's the biggest thing when it comes to financial literacy. You will be so empowered when you look at your budget, saving for the things that you want to save, saving for that house, car, whatever the situation is, your kids' 5 to 9 plan, if that's very important to you. You know, everybody has different goals, so you don't want to compare yourself to the other person that's in the room, the other person that's in front of you, the other person at your job, because everyone has different situations going through different things. And so you want to make sure that you're looking at yourself, you're looking at the goals that you have, that your family has. So I just want to make sure that, you know, you start off with that budget, you take a look there, and everything will start trickling in after that. And then you can really kind of set yourself up for that big impact on you, your life, and your, you know, next generation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for any of you who would like to rewatch the session, I will post it shortly on our YouTube channel. So be sure to check that out as well. So if there are no more questions, I will send Francis to them.
Okay, well, it was nice seeing everybody, and like I said, you can always reach out to me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Francis. And thank you guys for coming. So we will
Thank
see
you so much.
Thank you, Basma.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you, Princess. Bye.